This story begins with our MC, Zhang Yen, suddenly opening his eyes inside a bus packed with high school students. After looking around for a moment, he quickly realizes something unbelievable. He has returned to the past. The familiar faces around him and the destination of the bus make it obvious. This is the day he and his classmates are heading to Nanrung Demon Cave Station to awaken their classes after graduating high school. More importantly, this moment takes place 2.5 years before the city is destroyed, giving him a rare chance to change the future. To understand what's happening, we need to go back 12 years. That was when mysterious demon cave entrances suddenly appeared across the world, including the Nanrung Demon Cave. Endless monsters poured out of these gates and began slaughtering humans on a massive scale. Humanity tried to fight back by entering the caves, but they soon discovered a huge problem. Modern weapons became nearly useless inside the demon world because mana interfered with them. Fortunately, people later discovered that anyone who reached the age of 18 and approached a demon cave could awaken special abilities. These awakened individuals became humanity's strongest warriors, and after years of brutal battles, they finally managed to contain the demons and even launch counter-attacks into the other world. Because of this, society completely changed. Every 18-year-old graduate now visits a demon cave to awaken a class. These classes are divided into 3 categories: combat, support, and craft. Combat classes are considered the strongest and receive the most respect. Support classes come right behind them, while craft classes sit at the bottom and are constantly looked down upon. In his previous life, Yen awakened an F-rank craft class, making him seem completely ordinary and worthless in the eyes of most people. However, his class came with a hidden trump card. Alongside it, he awakened a divine tier skill called Modify. This absurdly powerful ability allowed him to change a single character in the name of a skill or item, completely altering its effects. Something worthless could become priceless, while something powerful could become useless. The moment influential people discovered this ability, they immediately took him under their control and forced him to use it for their benefit. Through Yen's power, countless useless items and weak abilities were transformed into valuable treasures. But the more they relied on him, the more they feared him. Someone with the power to alter skills and equipment was simply too dangerous to leave unchecked. Because of that, they restricted his freedom, controlled his growth, and kept him under constant watch. For years, Yen was treated less like a person and more like a tool that powerful figures could use whenever they wanted. Everything came crashing down one night, when a level 96 dragon-type monster suddenly emerged from Nanrung Demon Cave. It was an event that had never happened before. By then, Yen had finally reached level 70 and entered the ranks of humanity's strongest experts. Yet the timing felt suspicious. Deep inside, he believed someone had deliberately used the monster to eliminate him because they could no longer keep him under control. Before dying, Yen made one final move. He used Modify on his resurrection skill and transformed it into Rebirth. That single change became the reason he was able to return to the past. Now that he has been given a second chance, Yen has no intention of repeating the same mistakes. This time, he trusts no one but himself. He plans to hide his true abilities, quietly grow stronger, protect his family and friends, and stop the city's destruction before it ever happens. Not long after, the bus arrives at the Nanrung City Hunter Association headquarters, where the Awakening Plaza is located. The atmosphere is a mix of excitement and anxiety. Some students are already dreaming about awakening powerful combat classes, while others are quietly praying they don't end up with some useless class that will ruin their future. Meanwhile, almost everyone's attention is focused on Zhang Yen. After all, he's the Academy's top student in both academics and combat. Since he was born with an unusually high amount of mana, many people consider him a once-in-a-generation genius. In their minds, there is no way someone like him awakens anything other than an elite combat class. Of course, not everyone is cheering for him. The school's second-ranked student, young Hongwei, has always lived in Yen's shadow and can't stand it. Deep down, he's hoping Yen finally crashes and burns. Soon, the teacher calls Yen forward and announces that he'll be the first student to awaken, hoping his results will give everyone a strong start. The supervisor instructs him to place both hands on the crystal and begin the process. While everyone else is nervous, Yen remains completely calm. Unlike them, he already knows exactly what's about to happen. The students, teachers, and supervisors watch closely as the crystal begins to glow. Most of them are praying for a powerful combat class, while Hongwei is practically wishing for disaster. A bright light suddenly erupts from the crystal before a class panel appears. Just as Yen expected, the result is Repairman, an F-rank craft class. The entire place instantly falls into chaos. The teacher nearly grabs his head in disbelief, unable to understand how the Academy's greatest genius ended up with such a terrible class. Meanwhile, Hongwei and his friends are having the time of their lives. For them, this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. The guy who always stood above everyone else has just awakened what most people consider complete trash. One of the supervisors tries to soften the blow, explaining that Repairman isn't completely useless. He tells Yen that, at the very least, he could open a repair shop and earn a decent living fixing equipment. But before anyone can move on, the crystal suddenly starts reacting again. The unexpected reaction immediately grabs everyone's attention because it means Yen is awakening a second class. The teacher becomes excited and explains how incredibly rare dual-class awakenings are. People who awaken two classes are often considered geniuses among geniuses. Instantly, everyone starts hoping the second class will redeem the first disaster. Unfortunately, fate decides to troll them one more time. Moments later, the second class appears, and it's Farmer. Not only is it another craft class, but it's also an F-rank class just like Repairman. The entire crowd freezes. Even the people trying to support Yen don't know what to say anymore. Hongwei almost collapses from laughing, because this outcome is somehow even worse than he imagined. Within seconds, everyone labels Yen a complete failure. Pity, sympathy, and disappointment start flying around from every direction, as if his future has already been decided. What nobody realizes is that Yen is secretly celebrating. He couldn't care less about how bad the classes look, because the real treasure is hidden in their innate skills. The Repairman class comes with Modify, his absurdly broken divine tier ability. This skill allows him to change a single character in the name of a skill, item, or piece of equipment, completely altering what it becomes. If the target belongs to Yen himself, the modification succeeds with a perfect success rate. The Farmer class comes with Growth, a skill that increases plant growth speed by 10%, while also possessing the ability to revive a target, including Yen himself, and fully heal all injuries, though it can't restore spent mana. While everyone else sees two worthless F-rank classes, Yen sees endless potential. He already knows these abilities can become his greatest weapons if used correctly. Looking at the newly updated student rankings, he quietly makes a promise to himself. This time, he'll claim first place on every list and take every resource available. More importantly, he'll become strong enough that nobody can control him again. The people around him may be laughing at his F-rank classes today, but before long, he'll show them exactly why they should be terrified of them. After the awakening ceremony, Yen heads toward the beginner training base, a special facility designed to help newly awakened rookies level up safely. The place is filled with weak demon cave creatures that have been raised and managed by humans, making it the perfect spot for beginners to farm experience. More importantly, anyone who breaks the dungeon's clear time record earns bonus points in the upcoming provincial rookie tournament, which greatly increases their chances of getting into a top university. While most students come here simply to gain a few levels, Yen has a much bigger goal. He plans to crush the record and secure his path to the best university from day one. When he arrives at the entrance, the knight in charge checks his profile and immediately notices something unusual. Yen is a dual-class awakener, a rarity seen only once in thousands of people. However, the excitement quickly disappears when he sees that both classes are F-rank. Concerned, the knight asks if Yen is really planning to challenge the training base alone. Even though this is only the first stage dungeon, it isn't as easy as many people think. The knight suggests teaming up with classmates, but Yen calmly refuses and asks for the beginner equipment instead. In the knight's eyes, Yen is probably struggling to accept reality after falling from the Academy's #1 genius to someone carrying two F-rank classes. Trying to help, the knight gives Yen not only an iron sword, but also a pair of leather boots that provide an extra 3 points of speed. Yen immediately realizes the man is showing him some kindness. Unfortunately, that kindness is also mixed with a bit of pity. As Yen walks toward the training area, the knight jokingly tells him to call for help if the charging rabbits overwhelm him. Yen simply thanks him for the advice and continues forward. The moment he gets out of sight, he secretly uses Modify on both pieces of equipment, increasing the sword's penetration power and boosting the movement speed of the boots even further. He could have transformed them into something ridiculous like a holy sword or a demonic weapon, but the area is covered with cameras. Having already suffered for exposing his abilities in his previous life, Yen has no intention of making the same mistake twice. The beginner training base is split into 3 sections: the basic area, the advanced area, and the boss area. Most rookies spend their time in the basic area, while stronger trainees challenge the advanced area. Anyone hoping to break the clear time record, however, must reach the boss area and defeat the boss-ranked charging rabbit waiting at the end. These monsters may only be level 1, but they're aggressive little monsters with crystal shells on their heads that they use like battering rams. Yen's goal isn't just to clear the dungeon. He wants to reach level 5 immediately, which means killing at least 100 rabbits. Only then can he unlock access to the next training ground, the Cyclone Wolf Base, a place considered a complete nightmare for beginners, but a perfect leveling spot for someone like him. As soon as the rabbits begin rushing toward him, Yen charges forward without hesitation. One rabbit falls, then another, and then another. The monsters barely stand a chance against him. With every kill, experience points pour in, and Yen quickly realizes things are going even better than expected. In fact, he starts thinking that he might be able to push all the way to level 10 inches a single run. Reaching level 10 would allow him to unlock another skill, one that could help him create extremely powerful monsters in the future. For Yen, this training base isn't just a leveling zone. It's the first step toward becoming powerful enough that nobody can ever control him again. While casually cutting through rabbits, Yen remembers that Hongwei should be awakening his class around this time. Knowing Hongwei's personality, he is absolutely certain the guy will come looking for him the moment he gets a chance. Back at the Awakening Plaza, Hongwei steps onto the platform and prays for a class stronger than Yen's. This time, luck finally smiles on him. The crystal erupts with energy, and he awakens an A-rank combat class called Berserker. Hongwei nearly explodes from excitement. After years of living in Yen's shadow, he finally believes he has surpassed him. His followers immediately start hyping him up, declaring that the former number 2 has officially become number 1. Since Yen isn't around, they convince themselves that he ran off to hide after learning about Hongwei's awakening. By now, Yen has successfully reached level 9, but every level came with pain, injuries, and non-stop fighting. Even when his wounds heal, the pain never disappears. Still, Yen doesn't complain. He already knows changing his fate won't come for free. Now that the wolf pack has been wiped out, only one target remains. Standing between him and level 10 is the Wolf King itself. Just then, the Wolf King finally appears in the distance. This level 10 monster is covered in fur that naturally resonates with the wind element, making it far more dangerous than the ordinary wolves Yen fought earlier. After checking its abilities, Yen discovers that the Wolf King possesses a skill called Wind Blade Claw. Unfortunately, after analyzing the skill, he realizes there isn't much room for him to use Modify. In fact, if he tries forcing a change, there's a good chance he could accidentally make the skill even stronger. For a moment, Yen seriously considers his options. Then he suddenly pulls off his shirt, revealing the physique he built through years of brutal training, and decides that if tricks won't work, he'll settle this the old-fashioned way. After all, aside from his skills, he's still the number 1 student in both academics and combat. Without wasting another second, Yen charges straight at the Wolf King, ready to prove exactly why he earned that title. Meanwhile, Hongwei and his group are having a much rougher time. Their attempt at conquering the charging rabbit training base ended in complete disaster. They barely escaped with their lives and only survived because they requested emergency assistance. Yen Charge immediately scolds them for recklessly entering the advanced area when they should have been training in the basic zone like normal rookies. Deep down, Hongwei is furious. Even with an entire party backing him up, he couldn't reach the boss area. Yet somehow, Yen not only cleared it, but also set a record. No matter how much he thinks about it, he refuses to believe it happened legitimately. Convinced that Yen cheated somehow, Hongwei vents his frustration by slamming a fist into one of his unfortunate lackeys. As if that humiliation wasn't enough, the public notice board suddenly lights up once again. An announcement appears, informing everyone that the Whirlwind Wolves training base has been cleared in a record time of 58 minutes by Zhang Yen. The crowd instantly erupts in shock. Hongwei's followers can barely process what they're seeing, but instead of accepting reality, Hongwei becomes even more obsessed with bringing Yen down. He immediately tells his lackeys that they're heading to the wolf base under the excuse of congratulating Yen. In reality, he plans to ruin Yen's reputation no matter what it takes. At this point, proving himself better than Yen has basically become an obsession. Back inside the training base, Yen has finally achieved the goal he came for. He successfully reaches level 10 and unlocks his second innate skills. From the repairman class, he obtains a skill called durability, while the farmer class grants him plant grafting. The moment he sees plant grafting, a smile immediately appears on his face because this is exactly the skill he was waiting for. Without hesitation, he activates Modify and changes plant grafting into universal grafting. Just like that, another ridiculously overpowered ability falls into his hands. Universal grafting allows him to combine the genes of two completely different species and create an entirely new life form. The resulting creature can end up either weaker or stronger than its parents. Right now, Yen only has a 10% chance of producing a superior species, but that percentage will increase as the skill levels up. Future upgrades will also allow him to graft more species together and further improve the odds of creating something extraordinary. Although the skill comes with restrictions, Yen knows just how terrifying it can become. For example, combining two already powerful A-rank monsters could potentially produce an even stronger S-rank monster. Then, by using a Beast Tamer skill scroll to establish a contract, he could turn that creature into a completely loyal battle companion. Yen remembers how the powerful figures in his previous life took advantage of abilities like this for their own benefit. This time, however, everything he creates will belong to him and him alone. After sorting out his newly acquired abilities, Yen finally prepares to leave. Looking back at everything he accomplished in a single day, even he is impressed. Not only did he shatter records and reach level 10, but he also managed to obtain a valuable magic crystal. These crystals have an extremely low drop rate and can grant powerful effects when embedded into equipment. Unfortunately, anything dropped inside the training grounds belongs to the Hunter Association. Still, Yen isn't disappointed. Now that he's level 10, he can finally enter the wild regions of the Demon Cave. Out there, every crystal and material he finds will belong entirely to him. For someone who spent his previous life being controlled by others, the thought of finally becoming financially independent feels pretty damn good. Unfortunately, reality quickly reminds him that he still has problems. The claw wound on his chest suddenly flares up with intense pain. Since the injury isn't serious enough to kill him, his regeneration ability refuses to activate. To make matters worse, he doesn't have enough money to receive proper treatment at a hospital. After thinking it through, Yen arrives at a ridiculous but practical solution. The easiest way to fully heal would be to kill himself and trigger his revival ability. The problem is that doing something like that in front of the knights would immediately attract suspicion. As a result, he decides he simply needs to find a quiet location where nobody can see him before carrying out his rather insane healing plan. With that in mind, Yen puts his shirt back on and heads toward the exit. However, the moment he steps outside, he freezes. Instead of finding a quiet path, he finds a massive crowd waiting for him. Students from all over have gathered after hearing about his record-breaking achievements. Even upperclassmen have shown up to see the guy who shattered the training base records. The peaceful escape Yen was hoping for has clearly gone straight out the window. Seeing the massive crowd gathered outside, Yen immediately realizes he has a problem. There are simply too many eyes on him. In his current condition, using revive isn't an option. If he takes more damage and suddenly recovers in front of everyone, people are definitely going to notice that something strange is going on. His biggest concern becomes finding a way to get rid of the crowd without exposing one of his most important secrets. Just as he's thinking about this, he suddenly feels warmth spreading through his body. The injuries that had been tormenting him moments ago begin healing on their own. Looking up in surprise, he discovers the source. An S-rank support profession user known as the Holy Angel is healing him. The crowd immediately erupts in excitement. When everyone turns to see who cast the healing spell, they discover it was a girl named Kersonen from the Yao family, one of the great clans. The students are completely stunned. Nobody expected someone from such a powerful family to appear here personally. Yen is equally shocked, though for a different reason. From his perspective, Kersonen just saved him from having to secretly kill himself for medical treatment. He walks over and sincerely thanks her for healing all of his injuries. In return, he promises that if her equipment ever breaks in the future, he'll personally handle the repairs. Deep down, Yen is also thinking ahead. An S-rank healer is exactly the kind of ally anyone would want around during dangerous missions. Kersonen accepts his thanks and casually says she'll look forward to the day her equipment needs repairing. Unfortunately, the peaceful moment doesn't last long. Right as the conversation ends, Hongwei barges into the scene and starts shouting at the top of his lungs. According to him, everyone is being fooled by a fraud. He loudly accuses Yen of cheating to achieve his speedrun records and insists that there's no way the results are legitimate. The moment he reveals that Yen awakened 2 F-rank craft classes, many people in the crowd are caught off guard. Everyone knows that craft classes are supposed to have almost no combat ability. Hongwei keeps pushing his argument, claiming that clearing training bases solo while setting new records is completely impossible for someone like Yen. Hongwei then spins an even crazier story. He argues that the only explanation is that Yen used some ridiculously powerful equipment. However, that theory creates another problem, because everyone knows Yen comes from a poor background. So Hongwei boldly claims that if Yen really had access to expensive gear, then he must have been pretending to be poor all along in order to scan the school out of financial aid. As soon as those words leave his mouth, the crowd's attitude starts shifting. Some people begin questioning Yen's achievements, while others quietly wonder if Hongwei might actually be right. Seeing the situation getting worse, Yen calmly asks Hongwei if he wants proof that no cheating took place. Hongwei immediately agrees and demands a fight. His condition is simple. Yen has to remove his equipment and fight him directly. If he wins, then everyone will know the records were real. Kersonen immediately steps in and tells Yen not to fall for such an obvious provocation. In her eyes, he doesn't owe anybody an explanation. But Yen simply thanks her for the concern before accepting the challenge anyway. The reason is simple. Hongwei has been a nuisance for far too long, and Yen would rather deal with him now than keep letting him create problems later. Seeing his challenge accepted, Hongwei becomes incredibly confident. He unleashes his berserker aura and starts acting like the fight is already over. With a smug expression, he declares that Yen is making the biggest mistake of his life and promises to knock all of his teeth out. Moments later, he activates the berserker skill itself. The ability consumes 1% of his health every minute, while boosting his battle lust and increasing his strength, agility, and defense by 30%. Yen can't help but find the whole thing amusing. He teases Hongwei, saying that he certainly talks a lot for someone who's about to embarrass himself. He even wonders whether Hongwei can keep up that confidence for a full minute. Deep down, Yen finds it ridiculous that Hongwei believes an A-rank class automatically guarantees victory. As he takes up a fighting stance, Yen prepares to teach him a lesson he's needed for years. True strength doesn't come from a class ranking alone. It comes from the person using it. At the same time, Yen is relieved that he restored all of his modified equipment back to normal before leaving the training grounds. That means nobody can inspect his gear and discover anything suspicious. To make things even clearer, Yen removes the leather boots he was given and stands there without a single piece of equipment on him. Hongwei sees this and becomes even more excited, convinced the advantage now belongs entirely to him. Without wasting any time, he rushes forward and throws a punch straight at Yen's head. To a shock, Yen effortlessly dodges it. Hongwei refuses to accept what just happened and immediately launches another attack, then another, and then another. Soon he's throwing punches non-stop, desperately trying to land even a single hit. The problem is that every strike looks painfully slow in Yen's eyes. He casually slips past each attack as if he's been watching them in slow motion. While dodging, Yen admits that the A-rank berserker class is definitely impressive. However, he points out one very important detail. An attack only matters if it actually connects. Swinging wildly without thinking is nothing more than a waste of stamina. Yen then reminds Hongwei that they've spent the last 3 years together. During that entire time, Yen has already figured out exactly how Hongwei fights. Meanwhile, Hongwei has never once managed to understand Yen's style. Before Hongwei can process those words, Yen suddenly launches a counterattack. His fist slams directly into Hongwei's right torso, and a wave of pain instantly tears through the berserker's body. Hongwei crashes to the ground in agony while Yen calmly stands over him and reminds everyone that he's still the top dog. The crowd is left speechless. Nobody can understand how a student with 2 F-rank craft classes just defeated an A-rank berserker so easily. As for Yen, he feels no need to stay any longer. Hongwei has already been put in his place, and there are more important things to focus on. His next destination will be the wilderness beyond the training grounds, but before heading out there, he needs proper equipment. Thankfully, with his modify skill, obtaining good gear won't be difficult in the long run. The immediate problem is money. Since he returned all of the association's equipment, he'll have to buy his own starting gear. The moment he checks his wallet, however, reality hits him like a truck. For all his talent and future plans, he's still completely broke. Just as Yen is thinking about his money problems, he suddenly senses a punch coming from behind his body, reacts almost instantly, and he blocks the attack with ease before it can reach him. Turning around, he finally sees the culprit, and immediately realizes there's no real danger. The attacker is none other than Wang Qingfeng, his longtime rival. Qingfeng grins and praises him for stopping the punch so casually, saying it's no surprise considering Yen has dominated both academics and combat rankings for 3 straight years. The two soon grab a drink together, and Yen asks if Qingfeng was present during his fight with Hongwei. Qingfeng confirms that he watched the whole thing. In fact, he admits that if Yen had somehow lost, he would have stepped in and beaten Hongwei up himself. To Qingfeng, Hongwei has never been worth paying attention to. The only person he truly considers a rival is Yen. Hearing this, Yen brings up something that's been bothering him for years. During the first-year finals, Qingfeng suddenly surrendered, and since then, he has continued giving up whenever they ended up facing each other. Yen points out that he knows exactly why Qingfeng does it. According to Yen, Qingfeng has been intentionally handing him the top scholarship every year. As the son of a wealthy family, Qingfeng doesn't need the scholarship money, while Yen desperately does. Qingfeng immediately tries to deny it, and jokingly claims that he only surrendered because Yen's eyes looked too scary back then. Yen obviously doesn't buy that excuse for even a second. Since the topic is already on the table, he decides to ask a more important question. If the two of them meet during this year's National Rookie Tournament, is Qingfeng planning to surrender again? This time, Qingfeng's answer comes without hesitation. Absolutely not. He promises that if they face each other at the tournament, he'll fight with everything he's got. No holding back, no surrendering, and no freebies. Hearing that, Yen smiles and raises his drink. The two rivals make a toast, both looking forward to finally settling things properly on equal footing. It is one of those rare moments where neither of them needs to say much, because they already understand each other perfectly. Right after that, Qingfeng suddenly tosses a card toward Yen. When Yen catches it, he discovers that it contains 2,000 credits. Qingfeng casually explains that he wants to purchase Yen's Whirlwind Wolf speedrun strategy. Before leaving, he reminds Yen to send the strategy over as soon as possible. Yen agrees, without any complaints. Once Qingfeng leaves, Yen lets out a sigh of relief. He knows this was Qingfeng's way of helping him without making it obvious, and deep down, Yen feels like he owes him one. Still, at least his biggest problem has been temporarily solved. For the first time all day, he actually has some money in his pocket. Now, carrying 2,000 credits, Yen immediately heads toward the stalls to see what he can find. Before long, he arrives at the cheapest black market he knows. Most people don't expect to find anything valuable there, because nearly everything sold in the area is basic equipment. However, Yen knows from experience that hidden treasures occasionally slip through the cracks. He starts browsing the stalls, until one particular weapon catches his attention. Displayed proudly on a merchant stand is a demon shade saber, embedded with a whirlwind wolf magic crystal. The seller quickly explains the weapon's background. The saber is E+ rank equipment, forged from meteor iron infused with a level 5 whirlwind wolf magic crystal, allowing it to unleash the whirlwind skill. Unfortunately, its durability isn't at its peak anymore. Because of that, the merchant is only asking 18,000 credits. If the weapon were fully restored, it could easily sell for at least 25,000. Yen isn't surprised by the price at all. Expensive equipment has always been out of reach for him. Instead of focusing on the saber, his attention drifts toward what looks like an ordinary sword nearby. Curious, He asks for its price. The merchant tells him it's an azure steel sword worth 1,500 credits. The weapon itself is only E rank and was forged from standard azure steel, making it far less impressive than the demon shade saber sitting beside it. However, the moment Yen hears the name, his interest immediately spikes. He then proposes a deal. If he manages to repair the damaged demon shade saber, will the merchant give him the azure steel sword in return? The seller becomes visibly interested and asks whether Yen can actually pull off something like that. With a small smile, Yen activates his newly acquired durability skill. Looking at the merchant, he calmly says there's only one way to find out. What the merchant doesn't realize is that Yen's true target was never the expensive demon shade saber. From the very beginning, the item he wanted was the seemingly ordinary azure steel sword. The reason is simple. Once that sword falls into his hands, he can use Modify on it. And if everything goes according to plan, that Plan E rank weapon will transform into a legendary blade that most people couldn't even dream of obtaining. The seller looks at Yen with a doubtful expression and asks whether he actually possesses a durability-related class. Hearing a weapon's durability is notoriously difficult, and one mistake can make the situation even worse. Yen calmly explains that he's a repairman from an F-rank craft class. Hearing that only makes the seller even more skeptical. He reveals that he himself has a craft class as well, specifically a D-rank blacksmith class. As someone who works with weapons every day, he knows exactly how complicated durability restoration can be. According to him, even with his superior class, he still can't guarantee that he could successfully restore the demon shade saber. Since Yen is still a student, the seller decides to give him some advice before letting him proceed. He explains that once a weapon's durability reaches 0, it is effectively destroyed. Repairing it with a durability skill isn't as simple as patching cracks. The user has to sense the weapon's internal structure, understand the flow of magic within it, and then reconstruct everything from the inside out. If the process fails, the weapon's durability won't improve. Instead, it will drop even further. The seller then makes the stakes very clear. If Yen messes this up, he'll owe him 18,000 credits. It is a warning that would make most people immediately back away from the deal. Interestingly, Kirsten is also wandering around the market at this time, and she quietly watches the entire exchange unfold. She understands that the seller isn't exaggerating. In her family's guild, even experienced B-rank professionals struggle when it comes to restoring damaged weapons. For most people, what Yen is attempting would be considered reckless. But Yen himself couldn't be more relaxed. In his previous life, he spent years repairing equipment for some of the strongest individuals in the world. The weapons and artifacts they handed him were often a rank, or even S-rank treasures. Compared to those, fixing a damaged E+ rank saber feels almost trivial. The real reason he's so confident is because of the effort he put in during his previous life. Most people who awaken an F-rank repairman class lose hope almost immediately and give up on improving themselves. Yen was different. Ever since awakening, he constantly pushed himself to master the durability skill. He trained harder than anyone else because he always wanted to surpass those around him. After being reborn, all of that experience came back with him, turning what most people considered a useless skill into one of his greatest advantages. That's why he doesn't see repairing this saber as some impossible challenge. As Yen begins working on the demon shade saber, the people watching nearby slowly start realizing that something unusual is happening. His movements are smooth, precise, and incredibly confident. Even Kersonen starts looking at him differently. Earlier, when Yen promised he could repair her equipment in the future, she wasn't completely sure whether he was serious. During him now, she finally understands that he wasn't joking at all. Before long, Yen completes the repair and hands the saber back to the seller. The seller immediately inspects the weapon, and the more he checks it, the wider his eyes become. The damage is completely gone. Not only was the repair successful, but the workmanship is far beyond what he expected. The seller honestly admits that he completely misjudged Yen. He praises him as the real deal and, honoring their agreement, hands over the azure steel sword. Yen happily accepts it, but internally, he's far more excited than he lets on. The demon shade saber was never his real target. From the very beginning, everything was about obtaining this seemingly ordinary azure steel sword. The moment the sword lands in his hands, Yen uses Modify. With a single change, He alters its name from Azure Steel Sword to Azure Jar Sword, a legendary blade from ancient times. According to legend, this was once the weapon carried by a war god who effortlessly smashed through enemy armies and broke enemy lines wherever he went. Just like that, an ordinary E-rank weapon is transformed into something far more valuable. Thanks to this, Yen no longer needs to spend the 2,000 credits he just earned. University tuition is expensive, and he knows he'll need every bit of money he can save. On top of that, Yen can't stop thinking about his younger sister. Ever since their father passed away, life hasn't been easy for her. He knows that in the future, she will become someone truly remarkable, but right now, she's still a lonely shut-in who struggles with the world around her. Before heading off to university, Yen wants to leave enough money behind to make sure she can live comfortably. The thought only strengthens his determination to become stronger and wealthier as quickly as possible. Just as he's preparing to leave, a familiar voice calls out from behind him. Turning around, Yen discovers that it's Kersonen. She gets straight to the point and asks whether she can hire him. Then she casually offers 50,000 credits for a single job. Yen is naturally interested and asks what exactly she wants. Kersonen explains that she's currently only level 3, and wants Yen to carry her all the way to level 10. Hearing that, Yen immediately agrees. Kersonen is pleased by the answer, while Yen is secretly amazed that another pile of money has practically fallen into his lap. A moment later, Kersonen suddenly rushes over to the seller and announces that she wants to purchase the Demon Shade Saber. Since the weapon has now been restored to full durability, the seller probably informs her that the price is 25,000 credits. Without hesitation, Kersonen pulls out the money directly from a storage ring. The seller nearly loses his mind on the spot. Anyone carrying that kind of cash around so casually is clearly from an absurdly wealthy family. He immediately completes the transaction and hands over the weapon. Meanwhile, Yen is already considering how useful Kersonen's support abilities will be for his future plans. Just then, Kersonen walks back toward him and does something completely unexpected. She holds out the newly purchased Demon Shade Saber and tells him that it's a gift to celebrate their first meeting. Before Yen can even think about refusing, she firmly tells him not to return it. Yen is genuinely stunned. He never imagined she'd spend 25,000 credits on a weapon, only to hand it over moments later. In that instant, Yen realizes that Kersonen isn't just wealthy, she's also incredibly generous and well-mannered. He gratefully accepts the gift and thanks her sincerely. As for Kersonen, she simply has a feeling that Yen is destined for greatness. In her eyes, helping him now is an investment that will pay off in the future. With their business settled and their partnership officially beginning, Yen suggests that they stop wasting time and head straight to the rookie training grounds. A short while later, Yen and Kersonen arrive at the Charging Beast's training grounds. Equipped with his new weapons, Yen tears through the monsters like they're made of paper, while Kersonen stays behind him providing support and healing whenever necessary. The combination turns out to be ridiculously effective. Not only does Kersonen level up rapidly, but the two of them also manage to set a brand new clear time record for the entire training ground. As if that wasn't impressive enough, they head over to the Whirlwind Wolf base afterward and break that record too. News spreads quickly and people are left completely stunned. The shock only grows when everyone learns that Yen's partner is Kersonen from the Yao family. After all, her father is the chairman of the Dolly Merchant Guild, one of the top 10 trading houses in the nation. By the time Kersonen reaches level 9, exhaustion is starting to catch up with her. She suggests taking a break, but Yen tells her to rest while walking instead. According to him, her current stats are more than enough to keep going. Rather than getting discouraged, Kersonen becomes even more motivated. She admits that she wants to keep pushing herself just like Yen. After all, she awakened in S-rank support class, and she doesn't want to waste that talent. Meanwhile, Yen has already climbed all the way to level 13. Looking ahead, he announces their next destination, the Netherflame Boar Base, the only rookie training ground officially rated as S-level danger. When they arrive, the knight guarding the entrance immediately recognizes Yen. He knows all about the records Yen has been breaking and warns him that this dungeon is on an entirely different level. The Netherflame Boar King is far more dangerous than the Charging Rabbit King or the Whirlwind Wolf King. Most rookies wouldn't even think about entering. Yen, however, remains completely unfazed. He simply replies that greater risks bring greater rewards. In his eyes, anyone who refuses to take risks will never reach greater heights. The truth is that Yen isn't nearly as worried as he sounds because he has Kersonen beside him. Having an S-rank support class backing him up changes everything. Seeing that Yen has already made up his mind, the knight reluctantly allows them to enter and wishes them luck. Yen gladly accepts because he knows they're definitely going to need some. After walking deeper into the dungeon, Kersonen starts getting confused. There isn't a single monster in sight. Yen explains that this dungeon is different from the previous ones. There are no ordinary monsters here at all. The entire dungeon contains only one enemy, the boss itself. The moment Kersonen hears that, she nearly panics. Before she can ask any more questions, a gigantic figure appears in the distance. The sight alone almost makes her pass out. Meanwhile, Yen's eyes practically light up. He immediately draws both of his swords because, for the first time today, he's looking at an opponent that actually seems challenging. The monster standing before them is the level 15 spectral wild boar king. It's a terrifying magical beast from the demon caves that possesses a violent temperament and a skill called ghost flame charge. Ghostly flames flow continuously from its body, generating temperatures of nearly 200 degrees Celsius. As the monster approaches, Yen orders Kersonen to keep holy light active on him so he can maintain his HP throughout the battle. Kersonen immediately activates her holy angel skills, and with her support in place, Yen charges forward. His plan is simple. Against a monster this dangerous, striking first is the safest option. Leaping into the air, Yen attempts to use gravity and rotational force to deliver a powerful slash to the boar's neck. On paper, it looks like a brilliant opening move. Unfortunately, the Boar King isn't nearly as dumb as the previous bosses. At the last second, it jumps and blocks the attack with its tusks. The failed attack immediately tells Yen something important. This boss is significantly smarter than the others. Realizing that the same trick won't work twice, he abandons the strategy. Instead, he decides to make use of the opportunity to secretly activate Modify while he's airborne. More importantly, he wants to do it where Kersonen can't easily see what he's doing. Using Modify, Yen changes his steel sword into the steel sword. Normally, the steel sword is nothing special, but the modified version is a completely different story. The transformation isn't perfect because his current level only allows him to create a level 10 replica of the legendary Cyan steel sword, rather than the genuine artifact. Even so, the replica is still absurdly powerful. It can cut through iron as easily as slicing through dirt, and can tear through armor with little resistance. Yen isn't disappointed by the result because he never expected his ability to create divine artifacts out of thin air. For his current situation, this weapon is more than enough. With his enhanced weapon in hand, Yen immediately launches another attack. One slash is all it takes to cut clean through one of the Boar King's tusks. The monster instantly flies into a rage. At the same time, Yen quickly changes the weapon back before Kersonen notices anything suspicious. Unfortunately for him, Kersonen already saw enough to be shocked. She finds it impossible to believe that an ordinary E-rank weapon could sever the hardest part of the monster's body with a single strike. After thinking it through, she arrives at a completely wrong conclusion. Rather than suspecting the weapon, she decides the feat must be the result of Yen's overwhelming strength. In her mind, someone capable of breaking so many records, despite having 2 F-rank classes, must simply be stronger than most people with E-rank classes. While Kersonen is busy creating increasingly ridiculous explanations in her head, Yen notices the strange expression on her face and immediately guesses what's happening. Before she can get any deeper into her imagination, he calls her back to reality and reminds her to keep using holy light. He points out that if she doesn't contribute enough, she might miss out on the experience when the boss dies. Thankful for the reminder, Kersonen quickly resumes supporting him. Meanwhile, Yen starts preparing for the final phase of the fight. He considers modifying the name of his demon sword for a decisive attack, but after running through several possibilities in his mind, he decides against it. Choosing the wrong modification could easily backfire or fail entirely. Just then, the Boar King activates Nether Flame Charge and comes barreling toward him like a giant flaming blue missile. The attack immediately pulls Yen's attention back to the battle. After a brief moment of thought, he comes up with a much better idea. He suddenly tells Kersonen to close her eyes. Completely confused, she asks why. Yen simply tells her to trust him because she probably won't be able to handle what she's about to see. Thinking something gruesome is about to happen, Kersonen obediently shuts her eyes without asking any more questions. As the enormous boar charges forward, Yen activates Modify once again. With a simple change, Nether Flame Charge becomes Nether Flame Drift. The effect is immediate and absolutely ridiculous. Instead of charging forward at terrifying speed, the Boar King suddenly begins drifting slowly through the air like it has forgotten how movement works. Even the monster itself seems confused by what just happened. Yen can't help but appreciate the absurdity of the situation before deciding to finish things. He charges forward, modifies the Azure Sword into the legendary Azure Jar Sword mid-attack, and delivers a devastating slash directly across the monster's neck. The strike instantly ends the battle. A system notification immediately appears, announcing the death of the Boar King and rewarding Yen with a massive amount of experience. Thanks to defeating the strongest rookie boss monster, Yen jumps from level 13 all the way to level 15. Even he is surprised by gaining 2 levels at once. Meanwhile, Kersonen is still standing there with her eyes tightly shut. When the reward notifications start flooding in, she discovers that she has jumped all the way to level 12, gaining 3 levels in one go. The sudden increase leaves her completely stunned and wondering whether Yen actually managed to defeat the monster. After changing his weapon back to normal, Yen walks over to her. He originally told Kersonen to close her eyes so she wouldn't discover the truth behind his abilities, but he's honestly impressed that she listened without hesitation. In fact, the more he thinks about it, the more he realizes she's practically the perfect teammate. She's obedient, incredibly rich, possesses an S-rank healing class, and doesn't ask too many questions. Yen is already considering bringing her along whenever future dungeons require party members. A few minutes later, he tells Kersonen that she can open her eyes. The moment she does, she sees the massive corpse of the Boar King lying on the ground and freezes in disbelief. She genuinely can't comprehend how Yen managed to defeat such a terrifying monster almost entirely by himself. As Yen prepares to leave, Kersonen quietly watches him with admiration. In her eyes, he's not only talented, but also reliable and trustworthy. Before he can walk away, Kersonen stops him and hands over his payment. Then she surprises him again by including a bonus gift. Yen's eyes widen the moment he sees what it is. A storage ring. These rings are incredibly valuable because they're made from crystals containing permanent spatial magic. They completely ignore normal physical limitations and can store huge amounts of items. Even the smallest storage rings sell for hundreds of thousands of credits. Realizing how expensive the gift is, Yen immediately tries to refuse it. Kersonen, however, insists. She points out that Yen helped her gain 2 extra levels beyond their original agreement, so she considers the gift justified. More importantly, she believes someone with Yen's talent will benefit from it far more than she will. After thinking about it carefully, Yen realizes she's right. He plans to head into the wild regions of the Demon Cave soon, and a storage ring will be invaluable for carrying loot and materials. In the end, he accepts the gift. In return, he promises that if Kersonen ever needs his help in the future, he'll do whatever he can as long as it doesn't violate his principles.